Namaste, you're on The Nation at 5. I'm Anand Narasimhan coming to you live from the CNN News 18 newsroom. What a historic day. A project completed in record time, the Prime Minister touching down before time, but it is about the prospects of the people of Purvanchal taking off. That's the story of Vikas and development that the 21,000 crore rupee 341 kilometer long connecting 9 districts, this Purvanchal Expressway is all about. Ghazipur, just 18 kilometers from the border of Bihar, is now just less than 10 hours away from Delhi. That's the connectivity that's being spoken about. Imagine the possibilities. Imagine the fact that a dairy farmer in Sultanpur today can look at taking his business all the way to Delhi because his travel time is cut short. His travel time is now just about 7.5 hours. That's the beauty of this connectivity. And it's not just one expressway. There is the Bundelkhand Expressway, there is the Ganga Expressway, and of course the mega interlink towards Gorakhpur from the Purvanchal Expressway that is being spoken about, that actually links up more than 45 districts of Uttar Pradesh. This expressway, 341 kilometer stretch itself, opens up the access to more than 9 districts of Uttar Pradesh, which makes even the MP of Azamgarh, the former Chief Minister of Uttar Pradesh, will now be able to reach his constituency from Lucknow in just about 1.5 hours compared to about 5 hours that it used to take him earlier. That's the story, ladies and gentlemen, of Vikas that's being spoken about on ground. And to land an AN-32, to land a super CJ-130 Super Hercules aircraft, to land a Mirage and a Jaguar, this is no mean achievement, because in Sultanpur there is a 3.2 kilometer long special strip which is part of the expressway, which can in emergency situations be used as an emergency landing strip. And when one of the heaviest aircrafts can make a touchdown and it's very, very smooth landing, that means that the expressway, the project is rock solid. A lot of work has gone in and it's been completed in record time in just about 36 months. It's a matter to celebrate. But is this going to be the highway to mandate 2022 is a question many are asking. The Prime Minister committing and once again reiterating the commitment to development as he committed this to the people. The Purvanchal Expressway has been used by people over the last month and a half, but today it is fully operational in its full glory. There will be multiple linkages which will be demanded from these districts. There is a saving of about 1,500 crore which would again be put to use for furthering these access routes towards the expressway. A lot has been spoken about, but on display today, the highway and the flyway is a story in itself.
चाहे लखनऊ हो या दिल्ली, दोनों स्थानों पर परिवारवादियों का ही दबदबा रहा। सालों साल तक परिवारवादियों की यही पार्टनरशिप यूपी की आकांक्षाओं को कुचलती रही, बर्बाद करती रही। मैं देख रहा हूं आपा खो रहे हैं, क्या क्या बोले जा रहे हैं। उनका विचलित होना बहुत स्वाभाविक है। जो अपने समय में असफल रहे, वो योगी जी की सफलता भी नहीं देख पा रहे हैं। जब 3 साल पहले मैंने पूर्वांचल एक्सप्रेसवे का शिलान्यास किया था, तो ये नहीं सोचा था कि एक दिन उसी एक्सप्रेसवे पर विमान से मैं खुद उतरूंगा। ये एक्सप्रेसवे यूपी के विकास का एक्सप्रेसवे है। ये यूपी की शान है, ये यूपी का कमाल है।
Well, that is Prime Minister Narendra Modi taking on the dynasty and also saying that the erstwhile governments always made plans but never put them to action. and the commitment this time around. And it's interesting to make these, draw these parallels, ladies and gentlemen. This project completed in record time. The Central Vista project also now on a war footing, and the commitment to finish the projects before time to try and improve the returns or the ROIs on it, and of course ensure that there are no cost overruns. And the Prime Minister himself touching down about 7 to 8 minutes before his scheduled time. He touched down somewhere around 1:13, 1:14 compared to his scheduled landing time of 1:20, and that also surprised many. And perhaps that is the commitment. If we look at the other expressways which have been committed, at least about 75% of the work has been completed on the Bundelkhand Expressway. More than 98% of the land required has been acquired for the Ganga Expressway. The Gorakhpur interlinkage work has also now started. Let's go across to Arunima, who joins us. Arunima, the politics on the one hand, the Prime Minister also taking a jibe at the erstwhile governments, but the people of Purvanchal have also turned up in large numbers, and it's a sight, it's a spectacle for all of India to watch. Nobody would have thought that you're going to land some of the heaviest aircraft, defense military aircraft, on motorable roads and expressway.
Yes, a lot of locals were excited to see the air show on the Purvanchal Expressway. The UP Transport Department buses actually carried a lot of people from across the 9 districts which are going to benefit from this expressway as well. And when I talk about benefit, I just want to move out of the frame and show you. This is the old Sultanpur road that we have come to, and this is one of the 9 railway crossings that people would have to cross earlier. 9 railway crossings would finally get them from Lucknow to Sultanpur. You see an ambulance stuck there. You see trucks, buses which are stuck here. This was a routine affair, or this is a routine affair still, because even today public movement on the Purvanchal Expressway was limited. There were so many buses, so many locals there, that at this point the Purvanchal Expressway is jam-packed. But this is what is going to change. Now, instead of wasting time at railway crossings like this, burning fuel, I have been waiting here for 20 minutes now, and this traffic jam has been on because one train had to pass through. This is what Yogi Adityanath government is promising to change, that now when you have to move from Lucknow to Sultanpur to Azamgarh to Ghazipur, you can zip through. There will be no railway crossings, there will be no traffic snarls. The journey will be smooth, saving time and perhaps proving economically beneficial as well.
True, and the Prime Minister also talking about the politics, saying that you couldn't do it, so why are you upset when we have been able to do it? At least be happy that something is being done for this region who have largely been denied access. You know, the story that comes forth is that somebody in Sultanpur today can look at transacting business in Delhi and in Noida, even daily growers or dairy farmers now today, because the access is limited in the day. You start your day early 6 a.m. and at 12 noon or by 1 p.m. you are in Delhi. That's the kind of access that is being talked about for these people, and this is across 9 districts, and there is also more projects which are being planned.
Yes, politics, it was at the center stage of the Purvanchal Expressway right from the word go. It began with Akhilesh Yadav's press conference yesterday, the Samajwadi Party workers doing their own symbolic inauguration of the expressway on the Azamgarh side, and then the Prime Minister, without taking names, hitting out at the government's erstwhile, questioning them about their commitment to development, questioning them also about their commitment to national infrastructure. So it was not just a hit out at the opposition here in Uttar Pradesh. I think at the national level, it was a hit out at the national level opposition. I think the Congress party as well, because this is what the BJP has said time and again, that as far as nation building and defense infrastructure is concerned, this government, the Modi government, has shown much more initiative than the previous governments have. And I have been speaking to Air Force officers who were present there on the Purvanchal Expressway. There's no denying the fact that this is a strategic asset that is being created in the hinterland of the country. If there is a hostile situation, without waiting to go back to the base for aircraft servicing, they can now land and take off. So it is definitely a national asset. It is definitely a transport asset as well. What it remains to be seen, however, is if it is a political asset, so to say. And why I say that is because Janta of Uttar Pradesh has not voted back to power Mayawati, who built the Agra Expressway, has not voted back to power Akhilesh Yadav, who built the Lucknow Expressway. Yogi Adityanath is definitely wanting to change that.
Well, there are those who say that Yogi Adityanath is a Mahant and call him a Ponga Pandit, etc. And then there are others who say that calling Yogi Adityanath names, but they themselves are now battling their own superstitions. These are those people who have never even entered Noida in the past, but Yogi Adityanath has made more than 6 to 7 trips, so has Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Their aspect, perhaps their dynamics is that they want to go ahead and do what they have promised to the people. Interestingly, even the Agra Expressway, which we talk about, was the project was largely completed under Mayawati, inaugurated by Akhilesh Yadav, but we never had Mayawati coming out and saying, I am the one who made it. But when we talk about expressways, why is Uttar Pradesh now being called as the Express UP? Why? Because these are the projects. 75% work has been completed on the first expressway, that is the Bundelkhand Expressway from Etawah to Chitrakoot, 296 kilometers. We are expecting it to be operational from March. But perhaps at that time the model code of conduct could be in place, so there will not be this fanfare that's been seen. It will just be committed or given to the public. 98% of the land has been acquired for the Ganga Expressway, Meerut to Prayagraj, 594 kilometers. So that means work on this front will also start. Land acquisition is the biggest issue, and 98% of it has been completed. You can't start work till about 90% of the land has been acquired, but 98%. So tenders, DPRs would be out. The other aspect is the Purvanchal Expressway, which is committed to the public, 341 kilometers, built over 3 years, fully operational. That's the story. And of course, there is the Purvanchal, the interlink, which is about 91.3 kilometers towards Gorakhpur from the Purvanchal Expressway, where the work is also on. So this is towards the Chief Minister's constituency. Interestingly, Varanasi, despite not being so far away, and just on the cusp on this line, although Ayodhya gets connected, Varanasi has not yet been connected, and it's not part of this. So it's not about whose constituency gets primacy. It's about which areas need to be connected, which should not be left out and need to be included on the path for progress. That seems to be the story. Whether or not it would pay rich dividends, will it lead to votes and an overwhelming mandate in 2022? We'll have to wait and watch. Let's move on here on The Nation at 5 to another aspect, and we've been talking about this. We picked it up yesterday too and talked about cryptocurrency and the debate around it, especially with a lot of issues of security, of illegal aspects, money laundering, it being absolutely unregulated. All of this has been discussed. There is talk that in the winter session of Parliament, there could be a bill on regulating cryptocurrency that could be introduced. The RBI has its own position. It has been very, very critical of a non-regulated currency. They've always wanted only currency that's linked or regulated with a particular reserve or with a central bank. And they may be bringing out an internal report. But this is what's happened. There has been a consensus between MPs, members of the Parliamentary Standing Committee, experts from the industry, those who are also on crypto platform founders, or those who are trying to encourage trade in cryptocurrency, that cryptocurrency cannot be banned. So it has to be there. But in what form? What kind of regulations are important? The next steps of finding ways to regulate it. Now, a regulation like a cryptocurrency bill, what should it entail? What should be its contours? And of course, getting the RBI on board. Should India push for its own digital currency? The RBI has been talking about it, and de-recognize any other currency that's not pegged against a central bank. Let's go across to two people who would know far more than you and me would, and understand from them this entire dynamics of something which is uncharted territory. Aditya Singh, co-founder of Crypto India, is with us, and we also have Arun Vijay, co-founder and chief operating officer of the Geotrust Cryptocurrency Exchange. So Arun and Aditya, thank you very much. Let me start with Aditya. Tell our viewers, should they or should they not dabble in cryptocurrency? How safe or unsafe is it? How regulated, unregulated is it?
Okay. So, if the question is about whether you should invest in cryptocurrencies or not, so specifically I want to talk about Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is the kind of crypto asset, if you look at around the world, the kind of adoption that is happening, that is on a large scale. In US, we have such progressive moves wherein even the regulators are considering how they can integrate cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, into the banking system, wherein the users can hold Bitcoin in their banks, and even they can trade from it. even we have large institutes who are getting into cryptocurrency. They are maybe holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet, or maybe launching some sort of product wherein people can even buy products using Bitcoin. Like for example, we have PayPal, then we have Square, which can also be used to do the transfer. So as an asset, if you look at Bitcoin, it is here to stay. So if you want to invest in it, first you need to understand it is a very volatile asset. So it can go up really high, but there can be corrections as well. So if you want to invest in it, do a proper research. First of all, spend time understanding, spend time on understanding what is Bitcoin, how it works, read the white paper about it, understand history of money. And then if you want to invest in it, at least have 2 to 3% of your portfolio in Bitcoin, but also understand the risk. So I think that is how, if somebody wants to invest in it, that is how they can go about it.
No, but Bitcoin is not the only cryptocurrency, and the aspect is that if Bitcoin is not pegged against anything, so how do I assign a certain value of what is already pegged? So I use a dollar or a rupee or some other currency to buy something like a Bitcoin. There are tons of other cryptocurrencies also which is available. So they are all pegging themselves against something which are already physical money or which are already accounted for. But they are trying to ascertain a particular value, saying that I don't want to be pegged against anything and I don't want to be regulated. Arjun Vijay, how would you respond to that? And why do you believe there is a need to regulate it, especially in a market like India, with more than 8 million people dabbling in cryptocurrency?
See, the answer is very simple, right? Any asset you see, a laptop, a gold, crude oil, it needs to be priced in an asset that you understand, right? Or priced in a currency that you understand. That is the reason Bitcoin is being priced in INR or in US dollar. So any asset for that matter, it needs a price in the local currency for people to invest or buy in it. Okay, that is the reason. So gold is not pegged to any other asset, right? The price of gold is independent of everything. That's how the price of Bitcoin is also. The price is decided by demand and supply. It is not defined by pegging to some other side, right? There are stable coins like USDT, USDC. Those are pegged to a dollar, right? So this is the first part. The answer to your second question, should it be regulated? Yes, right? To separate good actors, bad actors, to ensure that crypto is used for the right purpose. Technology is always neutral, right? The internet can be used for good purpose or bad purpose, right? So how do you want to use it? How should we enable good actors to thrive in this ecosystem? Because there is a lot, it has an enormous potential, cryptocurrencies, right? We are talking about new internet. We can replace all the centralized systems, centralized social networks, centralized e-commerce with decentralized versions, right? To make this possible, you need positive regulation so that you have the ecosystem thriving in India, like how we can build the next Silicon Valley in India, right? So that is the reason why you need regulation. The second part is also investor protection, right? So a lot of people want to invest in this, but they don't know the basics, right? So they might get their hands burnt. You said there are like multiple cryptocurrencies. What are the cryptocurrencies that should be invested? What it should not be? What are the risks associated with this, right? And who are so with respect
Correct.
to stock market?
But here is the thing. Let me just take this. You're saying it should be regulated because there has to be some control, good user, bad user. But in that case, then Bitcoin automatically should be edged out of the Indian market, Aditya, because Bitcoin is about numbers. You don't know who the end person is. So I may be account number 12345. You will be 1332, and Arjun will be 1323. And if I've got to trade in bitcoins or send bitcoins to you, and I end up sending it to 1323, I don't even know who this person is. I can't even get it back. So automatically it is beyond the realm of regulation. So something like a Bitcoin, if you try to regulate cryptocurrency in our country, is automatically out of the picture.
Yeah, so if we talk about Bitcoin, so for example, if we look at the internet, there's no proper way to regulate it. And even if we have bad actors don't care about regulation or banning of certain assets. If they want to misuse it, they'll find a way to misuse it. But the benefits of Bitcoin and what the kind of benefits that India can get out of it outweigh the negatives that people are looking at. So, for example, if we want to impose some sort of regulation, one way to do it is like regulate cryptocurrency exchanges in India. Every account holder that opens an account on Indian exchanges, he does a KYC with the exchange, which is shared with the authorities in India. So that is one way to do it, wherein even if the transfer is done, if there is some sort of question, some bad activities happen, exchanges are able to help the authorities in identifying like who owns the account. So that is one way to look at it. And it will also help in a way to identify good actors from bad actors, because bad actors will then not use Indian exchange, they'll go for other ways. So
No,
that is,
but that's the thing, Arjun. If we were to say every other platform today, irrespective of the fact that it's not mandatory, they are taking a KYC. But even then, if I move money out in Bitcoin, I've moved the money out. They don't know where it has gone to, only I do, or somebody else does. So how do they recover this? So there is no tracking the end person. You're only tracking the source here in India, but you're not going to track it outside. And who it goes to, in certain cryptocurrencies you can track it, but others will not allow you access to that information. So it's as good as WhatsApp saying it's encrypted and I cannot give you access to it. It's far more encrypted and far more complex when we come to cryptocurrency. So how do we regulate something like this? And is the Indian audience, are the Indian masses ready? Because a lot of people will jump into it because they believe, because of a high risk, high return kind of a thing, they will jump in for the money. But you may have overnight millions of people crying foul and losing crores and crores of money, rupees, and it'll all boil down and come back, and the owner's responsibility comes back on the government of the day.
See, you made a very valid point, right? In some cryptocurrencies it can be tracked, some cryptocurrencies it cannot be tracked. So it needs a nuanced approach, right? Rather than an outright ban, you have to look at the class of currencies. Like this is a currency, this is a private cryptocurrency, right? If you look at Bitcoin, it's a public blockchain. Right from 2009 to till date, whatever blocks have happened, like every transaction is there for the public to see. And there are a lot of companies like Elliptic, Chainalysis, or TRM, which help to monitor these transactions. They flag suspicious transactions. Already millions of accounts have been flagged, right? So, and very simple, right? You're saying like if you miss a digit, right, it might go to a wrong person, right? This is, okay, today we are in an internet world, right? A lot of sensitive information being crossed, right? So it applies for that also, right? If you look at computers, it's all 0 and 1. If you change one or few zeros, a lot of things can go wrong. But you have systems in place to ensure that doesn't happen, right? So your system doesn't crash. Like 10 years back, my system used to crash every half an hour, every 1 hour, right? So it doesn't happen because you have systems and processes in place to prevent that from happening, right? So we are in a very early stage, right? At this point of time, you should see the potential rather than looking at the minor problems that are currently in the print and trying to ban the entire this thing, right? Throwing baby with the bathwater is not the solution.
Well, it's not going to be banned, that's for sure. But how do we regulate it, and what's the way to regulate it? Should there be limits, and should there be access denied to certain platforms which do not give you access to security breaches or information? And if they are not friendly to a certain level of regulation and policing which is required today, then what do we do with it? Arjun Vijay and Aditya Singh, wonderful having this conversation. This is going to be there in the ether for a while, and we'll continue to do these conversations with multiple voices, giving you multiple points of view and perspectives here on CNN News 18. Moving on here on The Nation at 5 for the moment, and let's talk about another big development. There was a demand that was made in the run-up to Gurpurab that there should be the opening of the Kartarpur corridor. So ahead of the 19th of November, the announcement has been made that the Kartarpur corridor will be opened from the 18th. Home Minister Amit Shah taking to Twitter to share the news. The application of pilgrims will be taken from tomorrow, following which the first batch will leave on the 18th of November. The decision comes days after BJP Punjab President Ashwini Sharma met the Prime Minister Narendra Modi to open the corridor for Gurpurab. And this is also for the first time that the corridor will be open for pilgrims after it was shut on in March 2020 post the COVID-19 outbreak. Let's listen to some of the reactions that have come in.
ये बहुत ही मुबारक मौका है कि कॉरिडोर दोबारे खुल रहा, सिखा कौम की जोड़ी अरदास है वो पूरी हो रही है। मैं बतौर मुख्यमंत्री प्रधानमंत्री जी ते होम मिनिस्टर उन्होंने मिलन गया सी, खास तौर पे ये बेनती की सी ते उन्होंने कॉरिडोर खोलने का ऐलान किया। मैं उन्होंने बड़ा धन्यवाद करदा। पहला जथा ऐसी पूरी कैबिनेट अपने नाल बाकी संगतां नूं नाल लेके जाएगी ते गुरु साहब दे दर्शन करांगे। सारिਆਂ ਨੂੰ बहुत बहुत बधाई।
मैं शलाघा करदा सरकार दी जिन्हां ने खोलिया। कुछ चीज़ां पॉलिटिक्स तो बहुत उत्ते हुंदियां ने, कुछ चीज़ां पार्टियां तो भी बहुत उत्ते हुंदियां ने। इट इज़ अ कॉरिडोर ऑफ इनफिनिट पॉसिबिलिटीज़। ਅਸੀਂ ਅਰਦਾਸਾਂ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਔਰ ਅੱਜ ਮੇਰੀ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਨਿਮਾਣੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਦੀ ਅਰਦਾਸ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਸਦਾ ਲਈ ਖੁੱਲਿਆ ਰਹੇ, ਟੈਂਪਰੇਰੀ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਦਿਨ ਵੀ ਬੰਦ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ। ਮੈਂ ਇੱਕ ਨਿਮਾਣਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਹੋ ਕੇ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ।
And news is coming on this front that an RT-PCR report within 72 hours is a must for the Kartarpur corridor pilgrimage. So an RT-PCR within 72 hours of taking of undertaking the journey is a must. That's the latest that's come through. Even as people can start making their applications from tomorrow, and from the 18th they can cross over. The first batch will leave. Pallavi Ghosh joining us with more details. Yes, Pallavi.
So this is a big development. It comes on the threshold of the whole BJP Punjab delegation meeting the Prime Minister. And, for the Punjabis, for the Sikhs particularly, not just in India, but also in Pakistan, who are a minority, who are the ones who are facing a lot of harassment, this is just great news. It comes very close to Guru Purab, that's one. And of course, very, very close politically, if we want to make that point, ahead of the Punjab elections, which is why almost every political party, whether it's the Akalis, whether it's the Congress, whether it's the Aam Aadmi Party, and of course the BJP, have welcomed this decision by the Prime Minister. Now, you talk about the RT-PCR test. Of course, it's going to be thronged by a large number of levels. It's going to be open tomorrow. So what we have been told is all COVID protocols are going to be followed, social distancing and RT-PCR test, and ideally a double vaccination as well.
Well, now moving on, thank you for your inputs, Pallavi. Big development happening in Bengal, where there is a direct character assault on the BSF made by a Trinamool Congress MLA. Trinamool Congress MLA Udayan Guha sparking massive controversy. Speaking in the West Bengal Assembly today, he has accused BSF personnel of inappropriately touching women while searching them during border movement. The BSF has refuted these charges, saying it is a professional force that has always performed mandated duties by adhering to rules and regulations. Now, this comes as the Trinamool Congress government had passed a resolution against the enhancement of the BSF search, seizure and arrest jurisdiction, which has enhanced from 15 kilometers to 50 kilometers inside the state border.
What is it that happens? क्या होता है यहाँ पे?
तो देखिए वो लोग जो टॉर्चर करता है वो लगता नहीं कोई जो हमारा इंडिपेंडेंट कंट्री है। वो जो हम लोग सुना था जो इंग्रेज लोग ऐसा करता था हमारा इंडियन लोग के साथ, इसी टाइप का बिहेव करता है बीएसएफ लोग बॉर्डर का पीपल के साथ। कोई लेडी आता है उधर से वो ये सर्च करता है, इसका तो सर्च करने का ये नहीं है, परमिशन नहीं है। सर्च करने का है तो लेडी जो बीएसएफ है उसको बुलाओ, वो उसका वो पुरुष लोग जो है जो मेल जो है वो ही सर्च करता है, ये तो ठीक नहीं है। बच्चा देखेगा कि हमारा बाप को कान पकड़ के उठबस कर रहा है तो वो की इंडियन ये होगा।
Now, Shogato, you spoke to Udayan Guha. Does he have proof of this? Has a formal complaint ever been filed or has he been involved in raising this matter with the BSF? He has made a very, very strong statement against the BSF on the floor of the West Bengal Assembly, and the BSF has not taken kindly to it.
Well, Anand, this happened during the time when the Bengal government, the ruling party, moved a resolution against the centre's decision to enhance the BSF's jurisdiction of search, seizure and arrest from 15 kilometers, which is currently existing, to 50 kilometers within the state boundary. This was a resolution that was passed in the assembly by a vote of 112 against 63 in the state assembly, and during the course of speaking in favor of the resolution, Udayan Guha, the newly crowned MLA from Dinhata in Cooch Behar, which is a bordering district of West Bengal, went on to make this very startling allegation against the BSF, stating that
But does
Indians
he have proof to back this allegation? Because he's made a statement like this on the floor of the Bengal Assembly. Secondly, has he ever filed a complaint against such personnel? Because this amounts to direct defamation.
and the statement was not expunged by the speaker. Also, Anand, I precisely asked him this question as to whether there have been any complaints. To which he said that people often find it difficult, to file complaints in police for fear of backlash in future from the forces, and they keep and the political the politicians of the area
So
keep
the
getting
speaker has
these
not
complaints
noted.
from the people.
So what did this go on record, or was this expunged?
This obviously went on record. It was not expunged, and the matter was actually brought to the notice of the speaker by the leader of opposition, Shuvendhu Adhikari, when he was also making his speech, stating that all of this has gone on record because the speaker had not given any ruling on the floor of the House at the time when Udayan Guha was making that statement. So all of this is, of course, official as far as records of the West Bengal State Assembly is concerned. Anand?
Right. Thanks for your input, Shogoto. Time for a very, very short break here on The Nation at 5. Stay with us.